Coming up this week, should marijuana be decriminalized before it's legalized? Also, how confident are you in the Canadian economy? This and much more to come. Hitting the streets, this is Outburst. Hello and welcome to Outburst. I'm Glenn McGuinness. Well, the Canadian economy has been on a rough ride for the past year or so, with the dollar hitting lows not seen in years. The oil and gas sector also experienced a rough patch, resulting in job losses within that industry. But lately, the Canadian dollar has been on the rebound, hovering near the 80-cent mark. So we set out to see if your outlook has improved. Our question: how confident are you in the Canadian economy?
I'm very confident. Right now we're both semi-retired at our house, but we're both working part-time as well. So we're contributing to our own income, and I believe that there are opportunities in Canada for people who want to make the effort.
I work for a local downtown business. It's been here for 25 years, and I have hope for the economy because we're doing well, we're working hard, and I know we're not alone. It seems to be rebounding a bit. There's a lot of struggles, and there's a lot of things that need money aside from the economy, you know, like we were talking about the Indigenous issues. But I'm hopeful that I still think hard work and creativity can help it bounce back. And as far as creativity goes, there's a lot of it out there. Fredericton's a great city and example for that. So yeah, I'm hopeful. You got to work hard. It's hard work no matter what you're doing, but the economy is seeming to have enough people to want to work hard for it.
No, I know, for instance, Newfoundland released a pretty austere measures in their recent budget. So, and that's definitely tough for many Canadians, I guess, particularly in the Atlantic provinces. That being said, I guess kind of thinking federally or in Canada as a whole, I think the steps that the federal government is taking could be pretty positive to try to boost the economy.
I'm confident. It's we're like a superpower too, and we're rich. You know what I mean? And we'll stay that way. Like we have free healthcare. Well, free healthcare. that makes up a lot of things for people. So,
I mean, it's not going to blow up or anything like that. I guess basically it's not doing terribly well. It's not doing incredibly poorly, and that's probably where it's going to stay for a little while, I imagine.
I think that with the new government, the way he's upfront about everything, unlike previous prime ministers we've had, bang on. I think he's going to do a good job. I hope he does a good job.
Canadian economy, quite confident. It may be down at the moment, but per capita, for population, for the resources we have, we're the only country in the world that could put up walls and survive on its own.
Boy, after the gas prices and oil prices, I really wonder. I think it's going fine. I think the projected growth this year is 2.2% or something like that. China is 7%, something like that. So, and they're coming down, I think. They're having some problems. The U.S., I think, around the same as Canada is, but,
I definitely think that we're definitely going into a little bit of running into some problems, rather, definitely with the oil and gas going down and the price of the barrel. But I think that we will probably come out of it, and I'm confident that we will, not go into a recession like we have gone into in the previous years.
I don't know if we're doing the right thing or not. I really don't know. It's not improving the way that the government was indicating that they thought it would improve, so I'm not sure.
I mean, just relatively speaking, you have to see how it kind of plays out. There's just so many variables. You can't really, I mean, here I am, I guess, blaming policy or whatever, but there's always going to be so many different circumstances that kind of lead to it. So at this point, I mean, I'm not overly optimistic, but you just have to kind of see how it plays out.
That's a tough one. I would say not that confident. I'm just finished my master's, and the job market does not look good for someone who has just finished their master's. So, I mean, I know we're a resource-based economy, and I'd like to see us transferring on to something not fully dependent on oil and gas, but doesn't look good for jobs for young graduates.
I think, from my point of view, it's looking brighter for the future than what we've had in the past, without pointing fingers at any political means. I feel pretty confident.
Well, I mean, I think it depends. I don't think the outlook is very good for the energy sector, for sure, or commodities in general, but I mean, in manufacturing, just because of the decline in the dollar, there's some opportunity there.
I'm also concerned because I see a lot of support for these trade agreements, and I don't think that they're necessarily geared towards supporting a sustainable local economy and domestic economy.
I think long term it's going to be pretty solid, yeah.
Why do you think that?
I think we actually build things, make things, mine things that are of value, and I think long term commodity prices aren't great right now, but these things work in cycles, and at some point it'll come back up.
Oh, I'm very confident. I think that they're doing a good job, and they have lots of good people around our Prime Minister, and I'm quite confident. I think it's doing well already.
Look, I know that Canadian dollar is less valued than American, and I know that now it's lots of the joblesses in Canada, and I think that the Canadian government should organize some jobs, some the work opportunities for that guys,
I believe in it. It's going to do very well. Let's give Mr. Trudeau a chance to see what he can do. It's still a little early right now. Let's see what he can do.
Who is Canada's Minister of Finance? Lawrence Macaulay, Bill Morneau, Catherine McKenna. Macaulay, Morneau, or McKenna?
Isn't it McKenna?
I had a clue. Is it McKenna? I think it might be McKenna.
Bill Morneau. We're going to guess the first guy. Macaulay?
What do you say?
I'm going to say A too. We'll just guess.
Macaulay.
Oh, yeah.
Macaulay. We're going with Macaulay.
Lawrence Macaulay.
Morneau? Morneau?
Absolutely correct.
Are you kidding?
I'm not kidding.
Okay.
Excellent. The Honourable Bill Morneau was sworn in as Minister of Finance on November 4th, 2015. The world is always changing, and Canada, of course, is no exception. We're one of the greatest nations in the world to live in, but we still have our fair share of obstacles. From the environment to jobs, from poverty to public safety, what stands out with you? Our question. What are the biggest challenges facing Canada in 2016?
I think our biggest challenge as Canadians, or insert any country there, is getting to understand each other more on a broader sense, to realize that we are actually the same, and that once you kind of get over that big gap, I think a lot of these big issue problems start to get tackled by many different people, so you get momentum. But we wear differences, and we have differences, and we kind of have a tendency to make those separate us instead of unite us, you know what I mean? But the sames, focusing on the sames and really understanding each other, I think is the biggest challenge. I think a lot comes from accomplishing that.
One of the biggest issues, I think, is having all of the children in Canada getting proper food and water.
Biggest challenge for me, in my opinion, would be anything that has to do with the environment, and thinking kind of long term for Canada isn't what it can be, and trying to save the earth, or keep it going as much as we can, and not just exploiting its natural resources for kind of the short term gain.
Poverty. That's the biggest thing. Look at all the people on the streets. Doesn't mean if there's 5 or 6, look, we bring people in from somewhere else. We don't look after our own, So
a lot of our veterans are living on the streets, saying we don't have money to put towards them, and basically declining everything. And not to sound uncompassionate or anything, but I mean, with the amount of money we're sinking into bringing people into our country, why can't we sink money into helping our veterans out? I mean, they serve for our country, and I know 20 alone that live on the streets in Fredericton. So I see that poverty is one of the biggest problems in our country when it doesn't have to be there.
Definitely some environmental issues that we've seen in the news lately. Legislation of marijuana has been a big topic in the last month. And again, the oil and gas is definitely going to be a major topic because of the issues surrounding it at the moment.
I'd say definitely problems with the minorities. I feel like they're being neglected right now, and we need to change.
Which minorities are you talking about?
I guess Black people, definitely. The First Nations, they're being neglected. They've always been neglected, actually. but we need to change that.
Balancing this promise, which is completely warranted regardless of your political beliefs or whatever, is that this notion of increasing infrastructure spending right now at this really tough juncture, in that it's much easier to justify that kind of stimulus spending when there is a recession, and we're not currently in one. So how do you really balance those two?
I mean, the coal in the ground, the oil in the ground, the this in the ground, and giving it all away and not manufacturing it here. I'm really sick of that stuff. Come on, get the jobs into this country and get the jobs into, into the green technology. Look at it all. It's so important. Let's get going on it.
As a student, I think job market is one of the biggest ones because I will be graduating soon, and people who I know are already graduated, they're having a really hard time just finding a job that is just any part-time job, and more specifically that is related to their job field. That's even much harder.
People can argue one way or another about greenhouse gases and warming, and the evidence is there. I'm not going to say that I'm really, a strong proponent of beating it into people's heads or whatever, but the evidence is there. You need to look at it. We need to give our children a place to live, on this earth. Not only our children, but the children of the earth, right? So, other than that, financially speaking, I think we need to develop, work on our infrastructure and our jobs. And employment, again, for the people that are coming up, like yourself, to make sure you have a job when you have a job right now, but you know what I mean, like to make sure people have a good job, the youngsters that are coming up and going to school and all that kind of good stuff.
I think there's a whole bunch of things that are going to be big challenges, but in the short term, we have to deal with the economy, we have to deal with jobs, we have to deal with the employment things that are happening across the country in different areas. I'm from Alberta, and unemployment has become a big issue in Alberta, and trying to think about how the government is going to perhaps make investments and support different regions. Longer term, we have to think about future carbon economy, those kinds of questions that I don't think I've seen any great solutions to, but they're big questions that we have to deal with.
Mount Logan is Canada's highest mountain. Where is it located? Alberta, Yukon Territory, or British Columbia?
The Yukon.
I would say British Columbia. I'm not sure.
Alberta? British Columbia?
BC. Alberta.
Yukon.
We'll say Yukon.
Yeah, Yukon.
It is Yukon.
Yukon Territory. Oh, yay! Hey, we got something.
Mount Logan is located in Kluane National Park in southwestern Yukon. It is the highest mountain in Canada and the second highest in North America. Recently, Canada's Health Minister Jane Philpott announced at the UN in New York that Canada would be moving forward with legislation for the legalization and regulation of marijuana next spring. It was one of the promises in the Liberal election platform. But the Liberal government has confirmed they won't be easing pot laws leading up to the legalization. But NDP leader Tom Mulcair feels decriminalization should happen immediately. So we took the topic to you, our question. Should marijuana be decriminalized before it's legalized in 2017?
I do believe so, yeah. I feel that the criminalization of marijuana creates an unnecessary burden on our legal system, as well as victimizing people that are otherwise innocent.
I do not believe that it is a good thing for our country to go through, but I see the benefits. There are definite benefits, but I do not think they outweigh the problem that will arise.
Yes, any steps that we can take to reduce the criminalization of marijuana use, like the fact that it's a criminalized substance, when people are using it for medical purposes, when elderly women are using it, like my family members, some of them use it, and the fact that someone can end up in jail and have an impact to their life, their ability to work, their employment, we should be working towards making it not as much of a criminal problem and doing bigger things to address the reasons that people are systemically using substances regardless of what it is in the first place. So we shouldn't be going after the symptom of larger social issues. And criminalizing people for using pretty much a harmless substance. Like, no one overdoses. What's the worst thing that happens? Sales go up at 7-Eleven. Like, this is really what we're willing to put people in jail for and take them away from their families? That's ridiculous to me.
Yes, it should be. There's a lot of people out there that are using it for medical reasons that really need it. I'm all for decriminalizing it. You know, people are going to smoke it. They need the help. I'm actually in the point of trying to get on it myself.
Decriminalized now? No, of course not. It should be illegal. Like, it's pretty logic. Like, you know what? Nobody should take drugs, period. But, you know, some people may need it because of medical reason. They always have that medical doctor notes, and that's fine. But why should you, like, you know, it's going to be like cigarettes, right? And it's bad for you, and we just tell everybody, hey, take it. It's okay. When do you draw the line as to what is acceptable and what's not acceptable?
2017? For certain extents, yeah, maybe, yeah. But as long as they pay taxes on it, I think it will be okay. It's been around for so long anyway, so they use it for medicinal stuff, thing like that, eh? As long as they don't abuse it, I think it will be okay. I'm open-minded on that.
I think there's been a transition already across the country in certain places anyway, so whether by law or by people's actions, I think that transitions are happening, so I don't think there'd be too much of a change. It probably would help out a little bit.
I imagine that'll make for a much sharper transition where, you know, it's black one day and then white the next day kind of thing. I imagine that'll probably be better for the community or for the country as a whole, as opposed to having a long, drawn-out, gradual process. Because then law enforcement at different levels or in different locations won't necessarily be on the same page. So I think it's good to have the end game laid out before they start making the transition towards it.
I believe so. I think it's a good idea. You know, take the black market, you know, basically kill the black market, you know, because there's so much, you know, gangs fighting over the same territory. You know, when you know, make it legal, then people can go to a reputable place to get their supply.
Oh, I think so, for sure. I think I'm not a user. I wouldn't condone it, but I think, you know, to tax it is a great idea, and to have it freely available. People are using it, so why not make it an actual legitimate business source?
I don't really know what the exact difference is, but I think it should be legalized. I mean, I don't really get why they're closing down so many of the businesses right now. I think it's only going to spur people on to get it in a legal way.
Decriminalized. I already signed. I want it to be legal.
Why?
Okay. Why? Well, as alcohol and other things are free, why not this one? We don't do it in public. They will do it in hidden way, and some will become millionaires. Let them do, you know, freedom.
Actually, it should be decriminalized, because if you're going to legalize it, it's just going to be deemed decriminalized otherwise, because there's no point in legalizing something if it's still a criminal offense to use it. It just doesn't make sense. So decriminalizing it, do that first, then legalize it, and you'll be fine.
I believe so. I think, like, I'm one of those people who think it does no harm. I think that alcohol is worse than marijuana. So, I mean, why should people be criminalized for, you know? And, I mean, it helps so many different, like, there's so many, like, health problems that, like, marijuana helps or eases the pain of. So, I mean, why not?
Yeah.
Why is that?
It's just kind of stupid pursuing people for something that, you know, is not a lot different than alcohol.
Yes, I'm a nurse, and I just see the effects, how it affects people that take it medicinally, and I think that it should be more used, and doctors should use it more often as something that's more natural versus something that is a synthetic and man-made thing.
The reason why I support legalization is more so for the regulation of marijuana. I think it would be a lot safer, and I would like to see like what the government will do with all the extra revenue from the taxation of it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, they've already made progress towards it. It just seems unfair to all the people. I think that if they're going to make it a law, then they should decriminalized it way before. I think it's not fair for people to be prosecuted for a law that was already that's passed because of a past law. I just think that's not fair.
I think that personally, if it's decriminalized, I think it would be a little bit better because then it wouldn't. But again, it's a hard question to answer because at the same time, legalization would have its perks, if you will, and so it could be taxable. But at the same time, decriminalization would make it so that at least there's a fine and people could still do whatever it is that they want to do. So it would be less of an authoritarian position, in my opinion.
Well, I think it should be probably just legalized right away. Why is that? Because it's ridiculous that it's not legal. I just went to a caffeine dispensary, and I'll probably go to an alcohol dispensary later. Why not a marijuana one?
Canada has committed to cut greenhouse gas emissions by 30% from 2005 levels by the year 2030. Prime Minister Trudeau signed the Paris Climate Treaty with more than 170 other world leaders. The aim is to cut greenhouse gas emissions and help less wealthy countries who are directly affected by it. But do you feel these targets are attainable? Our question: how could Canada succeed in cutting greenhouse gas emissions 30% by 2030?
Good luck. There's just no way. That's our industry. Our industry is in oil and gas. What can we do? Nothing. You don't want jobs, then shut down everything. And that's how we could cut the greenhouse. But other than that, ask the United States to do it first, right? Why are we doing it? Why are we always the best citizen in the world? And what about the United States? What about China? What about everybody else?
I think that's a challenge. It's easy to go put the headline behind it. It's very difficult to actually come up with the strategies to support it. There's just too much infrastructure, too many jobs, too much livelihood that it revolves around it. Now, I think we should all continue to try to cut where we can, and certainly incentives and programs to go do that. But I think that's a lofty political statement that doesn't really have a lot of strategy behind it.
I think everybody as an individual has to step up as being part of the earth and being part of all problems that need to be solved, and make it one individual at a time will make a big difference. We have to take responsibility.
I don't think they can. I do not think that any action we take will be able to cut our actions by 30%. I can see a more realistic number being 15 to 20, but 30% is quite a bit.
I think if we implement carbon taxation, and so by having large corporations mandate how many emissions that they're putting out into the air, I think carbon taxation would be a huge benefit. I know that Quebec and California have a program going on, and I think if that is seen to be successful, I think that would be a really important aspect to implement all over Canada.
Well, I know there's a whole lot of gains to be made in making sure our cities are better laid out so that people don't have to expend so much wasteful energy just in transportation, getting to work, things like that. Buy local initiatives. I'm sure if we could find a way to grow more of our own food locally, that would definitely help in transportation costs and shipping things around the world. So they got there's a whole lot of options on the table, and it sounds like we're making progress on a whole lot of them too, so that's good.
By capturing process emissions from the largest industrial facilities. Those are the only emissions that are practical. They're practical to reduce because they're concentrated, they're in big single point sources. Everywhere else is too distributed and too expensive. And then sending a signal to the average consumer that if you want to reduce CO2, it's going to cost you something.
Like solar power, water power, using a lot of less electric cars, that kind of thing, instead of coal and fuels that are non-biodegradable, right?
Pretty much the same thing. I mean, I think Ontario's been doing pretty well anyway. I mean, there's no more coal here and stuff like that. Most of it's hydroelectric and wind and solar. I don't think I guess Canada as a whole could do better, but at the moment I think that they're getting there. They're on their way.
I probably would say more busing and stuff. Like, I know they're making the O train and stuff, and I think when that gets on the go, more like subway stations throughout Canada, and less using less fossil fuels. And
I don't think it's possible
because there will always be cheaters, and there'll be people that can't afford to do the things that people say will help. And if we go to electric cars, the producing of electric cars uses a lot of oil and gas to mine it, and it's not a clean process. It's open pit mining. So, yeah.
I don't think Canada should. Realistically, if you look at, the number one carbon producing nations are the U.S. and China, what effect is Canada going to have? It is so small, minuscule, what our carbon footprint is compared to the rest of the world. If the other nations don't do it, how are we going to help?
I guess charging the largest offenders of greenhouse emissions more taxes on perpetrating those kinds of things.
Force automotive companies to start producing better cars when it comes to emissions. Promote more less driving, obviously, is what we need, is a lot less driving. So promote less driving, have more available as far as getting from point A to B. Like right now, a lot of people drive because there's just the buses are lousy, the SkyTrain's lousy. Transportation here in Vancouver is the crops. And but really, I think they need to get on companies. I think generally speaking, I think it's the big companies that have everything to do with lowering the emissions.
And it has to start by the citizens, the way we live every day. We have to commit ourselves to making proper choices. We can start with electric cars. We can start by walking more. Just simple at the base level. I think this is how we should start.
Let's get the electric cars up. Let's get more stations for charging up your electric cars. My dream is to drive one of those two-way cars and run a hemp farm so we can get some real rope again and make paper out of it. If I was younger, that's what I would try to do. Drive an electric car and grow hemp.
What is New Brunswick's largest city? St. John, Moncton, or Fredericton?
Moncton. Moncton.
St. John is in Newfoundland, isn't it? Is it Fredericton?
I'm gonna say Moncton.
St. John?
St. John?
Ooh. Fredericton.
St. John.
St. John.
St. John. Very good. With approximately 70,000 residents, St. John is the largest city in New Brunswick by population and area. That's all for this episode of Outburst. Just a reminder, don't forget to check out our new CPAC TV To Go app and our CPAC Quiz Canada Trivia app. For more information, check our website, www.cpac.ca. I'm Glenn McGuinness, and on behalf of all my colleagues at the Cable Public Affairs channel, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.